Designated Survivor Season 2, Episode 5, Suckers. Now this episode, I would definitely say, it was interesting going into it, knowing what the big issue was. It was funny that it was basically in like the first scene of the episode that Kirkman said like the sucker thing. And I thought it was going to be a much bigger deal. I thought it was going to be like he said it and it was going to be like in a press conference or something and someone would take, I figured it would be out of context. I knew it was going to be that way. But I figured he'd say it in front of a bunch of people, and then you say something in front of a crowd, it's like, okay, this percentage of people gets it, but maybe the majority didn't, and they instantly assume he was serious or something like that. And so they ask him all these attack questions, and it's like, no, that's not what I meant, and it kind of rolls from there in a disastrous way. But it was just like this dude he was talking to, trying to get him to, it's pretty much like the point of the series. He's trying to get people, on his side, people that he always knows the person he's talking to, and it's always like, we used to be friends and stuff like that. But it was like a simple thing, and he, of course it was sarcastic. And he said it, and I was like, that was it? And I didn't even think it was going to be his friend. I honestly thought it was going to be somebody said that was in the room, because I was like, he's the president. People know who the president is. So they're going to be kind of listening in, like, oh, I wonder what the president is talking about. I thought that's where it was going to come from, and they kind of just took, someone else would have taken it out of context. But of course, it ends up being the person he was legitimately talking to. And he goes on the news, and it's like, his exact words were, I'll make a stipulation where the American people are suckers, which I think most people would know, like, that's the stupid, like, no one would ever actually say that. Like, that doesn't even make sense to realistically be like, I'll make a stipulation that the United States citizens are just suckers. And it's like, that doesn't even remotely make any sort of sense. Like, no one would say that. But it was just funny. It was like, all right, well, that was the beginning of the end for them. And it was like, everyone's just being like, oh crap, we have, always, it's the White House, so they got a million things going on at once. It's like, this is just going to trickle down to every little issue, like the clean air initiative that they had, which I actually touch on. I thought it was just going to be like a bit of a reference, like, oh, it's going to affect all this stuff. And then it actually mattered. Like, Seth was in that meeting, and Kirkman goes in there to, try to help things a little bit, and he had his buddy there that he talked to who was, helping him out, and he was like, oh, okay, all right. And he was like, I thought you'd be in there to kind of back me up a little bit. And it's like, hey, things are crazy right now. Like, I can't just, people want to know that they're backing a winner. And I thought that was cool. It was like, all right, they actually touched on, some of the trickle-down effects that this random little comment would have. He talked to his friend to try to have him tell, like, the whole truth instead of just, like, that little moment and taking him out of context. But that was not going to end up being the case, and Kirkman had to decide exactly what he was going to do. And ultimately, by the time it comes to the end of the episode, he does decide to stick to his own guns, which makes sense because they have this file on the guy that he was talking to, his old buddy. I didn't think it was going to be that dramatic when he revealed it to him, where it was like, it's a legitimate picture of him in bed with this other woman that he was having an affair with. I just thought it was going to be like, okay, here's like some random tiny little dirt, or here's, I thought it was just a packet, like, this is what you should say or how you should say it, to kind of be like, he is doing this to kind of, ruin my image and save himself, but this is the truth. I thought that's all it was going to be, where he would be like, he's kind of a coward because he didn't want to do this, and I thought that's how he would attack him, and kind of, take the heat off of him seeming kind of like a dick, and put it on, his buddy to be like, he's more of a coward, and that's why he did that, to make me seem so bad, because he's scared to basically, help this certain group of people. And then when he was like, his buddy talked to him, he's like, I've had ovarian cancer, and then I found comfort someplace else. It was just crazy. It was like, I need you to look at this, and I was like, oh crap, that was like leagues beyond what I thought was going to be in that packet. I was like, that's what they wanted him to do, was like reveal that information to the nation. I was like, that was, even for Lior, I was like, that was actually kind of harsh. Like, everyone was kind of on board at that point because they were all freaking out. Like, this is just, plummeting. Even when they do like the on the road thing where he goes to the diner and it's like, oh, laughing and babies, and that baby put his finger straight in his mouth, and I was like, ugh, gross. This is germs to me. But even in that moment, when he goes out and this woman, he's like, oh, hey, how are you doing? And she's like, not good. And of course, she hits him, and this is kind of how I thought things would kick off, with people making like absolute decisions based off of him saying one thing or the other. And it's like, I can't just be like, I guarantee that this is going to work. It's like, that doesn't make sense. Like, there's no way in the world anyone could legitimately promise that. And if he did promise it, then it would have just been, another issue more than anything else, where it's like, oh, the president was like, I know for a fact I can promise that I'll get this done. And it was just, one of those things where it's like, I can't promise that. He was, honest about it. And it's like, oh, well, then I guess we are suckers for believing in you. And it's like, no matter what they did when things were looking up, they would just come tumbling down, because there'd be like that one thing there. So By the end, of course, he still decides to stick to his guns. Naturally, he turns it around with a great little speech at the end where it's like, yes, I did call American people suckers, but suckers for believing in the American dream, and you better count me in on that as well. It's like, of course, he's just turned it right around, and everything worked out perfectly for him. But it was a pretty good main story. I think the side stories were actually really entertaining as well. I swear I have the craziest issue ever remembering the lawyer's name. That is the biggest issue. But I really love her character because she's so good every time she comes in. And her and Alex, and the issues that she had to face was like Alex, at first didn't even want to go to her because of how she handled the investigation with Hannah. And it was like, all right, well, Kirkman was like, she's right here. She's really good about it. And he even used her own words against her. It was like, didn't you say that a great attorney is supposed to rub you the wrong way? And it's like, okay. So she goes to her and is like, I want to be second chair, which even when she said, I'm not a lawyer, and I knew that was a bad idea, I was like, that's way too close. That's like, you can't be a judge in a situation like that if you're related to someone's conflict of interest. I guess those same rules don't legally apply to attorneys, but I was like, I feel like that's basically the same thing. It's like that emotional element is why that law exists for like judges and stuff. And I was like, that's a terrible idea. But of course, she kind of agrees, and then she ends up standing up anyway, and she's kind of just dragging it straight down. It's like, can I get a 10-minute recess so I can just solve this? And even the judge was like, I think that would be an excellent idea. So, she talks with Alex and is like, some of these issues that you brought up, now I'm going to have to defend that we probably wouldn't have had to in the first place, and this is why I didn't want you to be second chair, because it's an emotional element that you bring into even the legal and technical side of it. So ultimately Alex does decide to, sit back and let her do her thing, and it works, and she shut it down. And like, once again, it was like, after they came back, that was probably like a minute and a half, maybe even 2 minutes, if it got to 2 minutes. And it was like, the judge was on her side and she won, and I was like, entertaining to watch. It's super fast. It's like the most entertaining, second most entertaining. It made me think of this old show called Franklin and Bash. That was a comedy show, but it was about lawyers, and they would always end up winning by doing like, it would just be like, boom, even though they were crazy, they knew what they were doing. Like, it would always come down to like, all right, well, this comes up, even if this new element comes into play, they always found a way around it. And that's kind of what she does. And it's like, that entire show, which was like an hour-long show, done in like a couple of minutes with less comedy. There's no comedy in it. And it was just like, boom, she does her job, success, and then it's like everything is solved. Subpoena's gone. I don't know. Considering there was a guy that was murdered, I don't think that whole storyline is just gone now. I'm almost 100% sure that is not going to end up being the case. But, that part of it, as far as the subpoena and things, that sort of scandal element, that has been taken care of. So it's like, all right, that's pretty cool. Still the crazy element of who's covering these tracks and who's being killed off. And then there's, the other, like a new investigation is added in this episode where it may or may not be tied together. You never know. But they have a British ambassador who is killed, or a British representative. I forgot exactly what her level was, but she's killed in the beginning of the episode. And they go through the entire thing, and it's like, all right, well, we were looking for this guy. We thought it may have been him because he was, kind of threatening her, and she was, planning to out a lot of people for some, bad business practices. So they go after this guy. It ends up not being him. They even have an alibi by the end of the episode where he's actually on camera shipping munitions and stuff. And so it turns out that his wife was kind of the one in charge anyway. But either way, with those issues they had, everything is kind of thrown out the window, because now it's like, well, neither of them did it. Potentially, technically there was no legitimate proof that the wife didn't do it either, but odds are it's like, all right, well, now the investigation is ongoing. So now we have a new kind of overarching story element for the investigative side with Hannah. Also, the agent comes back, forgot his name, but the British agent, of course, comes back. And they make out for like a quick second. Let's say his name is Damien. I remember from the phone call now. But they make out for like a quick second. I was wondering if they were going to do that, because I'm like, they don't, that doesn't always have to happen where it's like the spies get together and stuff. But I was like, I don't know. It was obvious what he wanted. And then she pushed him away, and I was like, I don't know if they're going to kiss again. But then she pulls him back in. So that might lead to something, might not. He might end up dying, so it might not even make a difference. We'll see. But I like the investigative storyline in this episode as well, like the new side of it. Like I said, as far as what they did with everything going on with Alex and her mother and the subpoena, even though it's been dealt with, I do have to wonder if that's going to be done, because people did die, and we still have like no answers whatsoever. It's like, why was that guy killed? Why was that place with all the files set to explode? So there's still a lot of elements there, like who's doing this? Do they happen to be related in this new investigation? Because it could be totally separate. It could be, I highly doubt it, or well, I can't say I highly doubt it, but It could be Lloyd if he is not actually dead. It could just be him doing all this stuff behind the scenes after he faked his own death. So, don't know, but now we have 2 investigations going on. Considering they kind of dealt with the subpoena stuff, that'll probably die down for a little bit. And then it'll kind of, I feel like that's what they're going to do at least this season, is kind of jump back and forth between the 2 investigations. Like, oh, we have a lead for this because something else came up after all the subpoena stuff is done. Another person that used to be connected with that has now been found dead. So they switch to that investigation, then it switches back when they find like a new lead for whoever killed this British rep. So I feel like that's kind of where it's headed. Maybe they will converge if it does end up being Patrick Lloyd is not dead and he's the one who's been doing, both things, kind of just taking people out for whatever reason. But I am excited to see where they take that. Even if that investigation for the subpoena and Alex's mom is officially done, I'm excited for this new one because it's just like, all right, well, they still have the investigation thing going. So let's see how how that all ends up playing out. And of course, it's a British rep, so that was an easy way for them to bring the agent back in. So simple way to keep him around and kind of build that relationship, however that's going to play out. But all in all, I thought it was a pretty good episode. Things, as always, end up working out. I'm sure we'll get to some of the grander conflicts as we kind of continue throughout the season. But even though everything always tends to kind of wrap up nicely, it's still entertaining. It's still always really fun to see how in the world is Kirkman going to get out of this, typically with a pretty grand speech that kind of just rallies the people and everything's perfect again. But then there's always the side stories, like how is this going to affect the rest of the season. Everything happening with Alex's mom seems to be done, but like I said, who knows, considering like the death of a man and this mysterious cover-up with these files, there's still a lot there that they can explore, and I'm sure there's still a lot more for us to see, because of those elements, I'm sure that that's not done. I'd actually be very surprised if them doing the court case and it's like, all right, everything's done, and the judge is like, subpoena's gone. That's like one good element, and it doesn't go to the tragedy of like a scandal and everything with the president's mother-in-law, but there's still the fact that a guy was murdered and those files were meant to be, taken down, like burnt up in an explosion. So there's still a lot to look forward to with that, but I think everything they did in this episode was good. I'm looking forward to where the investigative stuff goes, because that's pretty much where all the bad stuff happens, where it's like everything in the main stories always wraps up nice and well, and then the investigative stuff is just like, we kind of have an answer, but now there's nothing. And then with this new case, it was just like, we thought we had something, and by the end, it's like, nope, we literally have nothing whatsoever now. So they're going to just trapped within a bunch of mysterious little moments of people dying and random cover-up. So I'm definitely looking forward to how that expands. But of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. And with this new investigation taking place as to who killed this representative and also the exact reason why they did it, I would love to know your theories if you guys have any. With everything that's happening on the investigative side, I'm kind of leaning more and more towards the fact that Patrick Lloyd might actually be alive, because they could have introduced a new person that's also difficult to get, and I feel like that's why they haven't. Maybe they just don't have an actor, maybe they have something already set in mind for a specific new main villain, I guess. But it just makes me wonder, like the whole thing I said before, when they seemingly killed Patrick Lloyd, was like, well, there's no body. Every time it's a TV show and there's no body, but there's a death, I have to be super suspicious. So there's that. There's still the fact that we don't 100% know what was on that file. Like they got like a little bit, and that's kind of what led them to kind of where they're at right now for the subpoena and stuff. But that's still up in the air. Like I'm sure there'll be some way to get more information out of that, and more details will kind of come about with that case. But I don't know. I want to say it's him involved in both cases, but at this point, the new investigation is so insanely early. We have legitimately no reason. It's just like, well, she was a representative. She kind of fought for a bunch of different things, which is why she has a lot of different enemies. So it's just like, there's nothing to specifically link it to Lloyd, but at the same time, he's like a super mega terrorist who's insanely rich, even though he's not that rich now. He had some power, so there could totally be a reason to connect both these different cases together, and it still ends up being him. But like I said, ultimately, I would love to know your theories on what's going to happen there, if it's going to be a new character, if Lloyd is going to come back and we find out he didn't actually die. And of course, just I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.